Welcome to the Fantasy Fanatics podcast. I'm Random, once again joined by Archer this week. No Welshie, he's out sick.
G'day, Random.
How you going?
Yeah, I'm better than Welshie. I've still got a bit of a flu myself, though, so I blame Welshie.
And you're doing better than him in the ranks, which isn't hard to do when he's at 17,000.
Yeah, that's right. Despite the what I can only assume was sabotage with the suggestions and dropping a further 3,000 odd places myself, I'm still beating him, so that's all right.
It's okay, I think I slid out by like 5,000 places. It's been a shocking start to the season, or just last week.
Yeah, particularly bad week last week.
I think it's like too many people in my team scoring low, and then like guys like Bateman and Tedesco just exploding, and Sivo. Who the fuck still has Sivo? Fuck you guys.
Apparently, a lot of people.
I traded him out week one, and I was like, all right, don't need him anymore. He's not doing anything. Never
He was
trust
one of those
friends.
ones that I never started with. So
Ugh. I was tempted to trade him back in. We'll get right into our team picks and our trades and stuff for the week.
yep.
For me, I've dropped both rookie halves. Brown and Kieran are jumping out of my team. I'm bringing in Cartwright because I've got to be in the Cardi party. And the bloke we touched on last week, I'm bringing in Zeri. He's named to start.
Okay.
He's a gun, and his Twitter's fantastic. So that's honestly what swayed me. I was like, "Oh, Oakenberg he looks good," and I'm like, I'll go with Zeri. I like his Twitter, and it's a bit more extra cash.
Okay, all right. I'll have to check out his Twitter then.
And so I've got some cash stockpiled. I'm holding on to Edwards, who I'm hoping plays in a dry track.
Yep.
Next week's this is the week where I'm okay making two trades. Next week I might need 4 or 5, depending how guys like Arrow, Edwards, Hughes, and Mahoney all pull up.
Yeah. There's definitely a few guys that are sort of bottoming out, and then there's a few where the bottomers fell out. And I think over the next week or two, you've really got to start making some.
Yeah.
If you want some players like Teddy and stuff, you've got to get them in sooner rather than later. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to get them in.
Well, Tedesco and Bateman are those two that are at the top of my list, and if Arrow underperforms, I'm just going to make the plunge.
Yep.
And Edwards, I mean, if he scores 70, I still might be tempted to trade him, but I'll probably slot Hughes out, hopefully.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, something to consider. I don't know where you'd play him, but if you do miss Teddy, I guess Ponga has still got another week or two, depending on how he scores at fullback.
Ponga's Ponga and Crichton. They're the two that are I've got my eye on, but they're not coming into my team next week. They're the week after, look at and see. Because I think Ponga will take some time to get back into that fullback form. Watch him bust out 80 odd. But
Yeah.
even if he scores 80, he's not going to break the bank. He's still lost a lot of cash, and his break even is 80. So
Exactly.
he'll be fine.
Yep.
What about you?
So I freed up a lot of cash last week based on the suggestions here. The trades that I'd made were, let me just quickly bring them up because I've forgotten already. I tried to forget everything. I brought in Burns, yay, and Bird, yay, and dropped Tolman and Holland. But it gave me, I've got 300k to spend at the moment in my kitty. So, that said, I haven't got any halves cover currently, and I had Kieran and Morgan. So I'm probably going to have to do something about Kieran. Burns getting injured is a problem because my only real cover there is Rava, who I think I might just play this week and hope that he does something fantastic.
Honestly, Rava's been copping it on the forums, and I think it's because Sivo went huge. People are like, "Oh, I'd rather Sivo over him." But
Yeah.
Rava does a lot of work. He reminds me of sort of Mansour, where he makes a lot of hit ups, the first or second tackle out of his own end. He does a lot of work. It's just he has Aitken inside of him, not passing to him.
Yep.
But the bloke is dead set, has that gun potential if he can just get his hands on the ball more. He looks really good.
I think being young, he might be a little bit like Kotrick, where there's some weeks that he just doesn't get himself involved because he hasn't quite got that mentality of of making sure he goes looking for work each week. Otherwise, he's not going to get the ball. But I think when he does go looking for work, yeah, he's got that ability to break tackles, beat the first man, that sort of thing, and
I
pick up some nice points.
I wouldn't even say like I wouldn't even say that's the issue. It's just Aitken because like Aitken will get the ball and then he'll cut back infield,
Yeah,
and
he
that's
loves
fine.
that.
Aitken's great, but rather dead set the way he works out of his own end, taking the hit ups and stuff. I think he's in for a big game.
Yeah, I hope it's not a case of what's been so far: 1 week hot, 1 week not.
Yeah, no, fingers crossed.
Yeah, so what I think I might do is I think I might trade out Kieran and Mahoney or Marnie, however his name is said.
I think it's Marnie, but we all prefer Mahoney.
Yeah, okay. So I think those two might go out, and then I might trade in Rain and your tip from last week, Lockie Lewis. I don't know.
I
It scares me a little bit to consider it, but he's just scoring so damn well.
and it's all kick meters. He
Yeah,
doesn't need tries to be that top scorer.
yeah, exactly. Um, I'm a little concerned that Cogger may change his scores a little bit. I think last year his kick meters sort of varied quite a lot. So it's hard to say whether or not he's going to take kick meters from foreign Lewis, sorry, compared to foreign.
I think you'll find that we did a little look into him before, and if he's at 5'8", and like the halfback wants to kick, which Lachlan really does, I
Mm-hmm.
he kicks and he just sits back. He'll play that more running role at 5'8", and I think
Yep.
Lewis should be fine, but there is a risk. And considering Lewis is coming up, he's not that much more than he's like not that much cheaper than like Cleary and Johnson and stuff.
Yep.
It's a hard call, but he's averaging 55 points, 56 points.
Yeah.
And with Cogger there, he could go and do more, like play the ball through more. Wow, I
Yeah.
got tongue
Yeah.
tied.
No, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, so I guess that leads into the next point that I wanted to discuss because I've been looking into it myself, and it's the halves and the have-nots. Um, and I've got a few figures that are run by you because to me, looking at this with Kieran and Brown going down and there being a whole field, you've chosen Cardi, obviously.
Uh, he's going to be fine. If he's starting in the second row or on that edge, I think there's like stats that show he averages around that 50 mark. I can do that. Someone posted up that if he averages 30 points a week for the next 3 weeks, he still makes something like 60, 70K. And
Yeah,
that's more than a month. More than
I,
enough.
just to me, if he averages 30 points a week, I think I'd be upset with 30 points a week in my scores, if that makes sense, in my starting 17. I know that's what I've been getting from Kieran and such, but I haven't been happy with that. So I think for me,
You want that
coupled with
role.
Cartwright's putrid defense, I would like a solid half replacement. So I've had a look at the top. I think it's 8. I could be wrong. Halves. I basically just went down until I reached the popular ownership. So let me rattle off some numbers for you because I think it's interesting. So
Yep.
DCE is up the top with an average of 66, which is 11 points over 2018. So whether or not he's in a purple patch or it's going to continue, we'll see. I think it'll continue. And his ownership's only 12.5%, which is, I think, quite low given how well he's going. Those teams must be loving it. Reynolds is not far behind him with 63 points, which is 14 points more than 2018. So he's killing it. Like DCE though, I think I kind of expect that to continue. And he's got an even lower ownership of just over 5.5%. Then we've got Lewis, who, as you mentioned, is averaging 55, and he's only got just under 4% ownership. Munster is just below 50 with an average of almost 11% ownership. Sorry, not average. But he's DPP, so he could be handy for. There's a few teams that want to cover Burns and Kieran like myself, having Munster could be a handy option there. I've considered that instead of Lewis. Then you've got Kiri, who it's hard to say. He's averaging 47, just over 47, but with Cronk out of the team, it's difficult to say whether or not that continues or if that was just him stepping up. But surprisingly, he's at almost 9% ownership, which I thought was quite high, more than I
Yeah,
expected.
that seems like a lot of the ownership probably does come into like less competitive teams. I think we work out it's the top 20,000 or so are the competitive teams that you're really competing against.
Yep,
So yeah, the ownerships does like Kiri's a good example of where it's skewed because I don't think he's been
he'd be in
mentioned
many top
once. Yeah.
teams. Yeah, I think you're right. Unless people are keeping quiet about a sneaky little pod, um, and I don't think they would be after the last few weeks.
Um,
Then, sorry,
you're
go
right.
ahead.
No, you're right.
I was going to say then we've got the last one before we hit the somewhat commonly owned is Norman, who I think is interesting. He's averaging the same as Kiri basically at 47, and he's only got 1.6% ownership. But I don't know how many of his points have come from being shunted around, and I don't know whether his points will continue like that now without Witter. Whether or not Dragons, I mean, they've named another back on the bench, haven't they? So they may continue playing silly buggers, but he's scoring all right.
Yeah, no, it I think it depends how he goes, how the team as a whole goes with Widdop.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Norman had like a standout season, might have been last year or the year before with the Eels, where he was one of the guys you wanted to own because he was just killing it.
Yeah,
But I'm pretty sure at that time it was like just before Moses arrived at the Eels, so he wasn't.
yeah,
He was the only one in the team essentially that was like their dominant player, dominant playmaker.
yep.
And I think the Dragons have enough with Dufty,
And Hunt.
Hunt. Yeah, Dufty, Hunt, and McInnes does a lot of work as well at
Yeah,
dummy half. So I don't see him being that breaking that top tier group.
no. Okay. So then the last two are Cleary and Morgan, who are pretty close to each other around that 46 mark, with nearly 20% ownership for Cleary and 27% for Morgan. So I think to me, when you look at someone like Cleary, who's got 20% ownership at 46 and a half, and then there's someone like Reynolds at 63 with 5% ownership. I know pods don't mean a lot, but when you're lagging behind like myself, I'm really looking at thinking halves might be the area that I can catch up to some teams if I just spend that little bit of that 300k that I've got in picking up a Reynolds or maybe a Lewis. Um, Ideally Reynolds, but I don't think I can afford it. That might be where I can gain ground over other teams. I don't know.
No, I agree with you. I think Cleary's one of those guys that everyone had at the start of the season.
Yep.
He's clear, like people were expecting to be in that Cherry Evans Reynolds bracket,
Yep.
and he's clearly dropped off. I think with Kakao returning, he could come back.
Yeah, it's a fair point. There's a bit of hope there, I guess, for his owners still. I wouldn't, if I owned him, I wouldn't be jumping off, but I'm just not sure if I'll be picking him up.
Oh, I wouldn't pick him up. I'd like you said, there's hope there for the owners, but there's better halve options around. Even Luke Lewis or Lachlan Lewis.
Lachlan, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, Lachlan Lewis. He's cheaper and he's averaging almost 10 points more than him at the moment.
yep,
So there's value elsewhere in the halves, and I think you've got the right plan going with the POD half to claw your way back because
yep,
everyone's got Kierrigan. Everyone's going to have Cartwright by the end of this week, and so many people have Morgan as it is.
yeah, exactly.
So I think halves is an area where you can make a difference.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, I guess that's a wrap of our teams.
Yeah, that's a wrap of our teams. We can move into the questions then.
Yep.
The first question comes from Rhino. When trading players for value rises and not considering points scoring, what value do you put on a single trade? So if you're trading a player who's only going to make you 5k, do you hold the trade for later use or do you pull the trigger anyway? So like how much is a trade worth to you?
So, I think someone's done the numbers on this recently, or it might have been last season. Um, and I've got no idea what it was. I think it was around 150k or something like that, wasn't it? Was roughly what how they'd worked it out. They'd said this was the end value of the winning teams, and this is your start value, and you've got X number of trades. Um, so I kind of just use that 150k if I'm going solely for money, um, but I very rarely do. For me, it's usually a combination of the two. Um, it's so easy to fall behind, as well, you and I have found out, just by dropping 10, 20 points here and there each week on a few players, and suddenly, you're a couple of 100 points behind the leader.
So your sweet spot is that if you're trading someone in to be a cash K, you want like 150k.
Yeah, but I've got wiggle room for depending on how they're scoring. If someone's scoring, um, so I guess that's probably why I went fairly mid-range heavy this season, because to me, if someone's scoring well, I'm okay with them being a slow burner or perhaps only making 80k. Um, if I've got consistent scores, and it's not hurting my week-to-week score. If I have to play them in my 17, if they're outside my 17, then yeah, it's purely, I guess, probably 150k is my sweet spot. What about yourself?
Um, I live by the rule 50 a trade is worth 50k. So if I'm going to trade someone in and then trade them back out, 100k, but
Right.
I'm not going to I'm not going to hold someone who's got like 20 to 30k left
Yeah.
if I can get their scores from a cheaper player and make more cash in that time.
Yep.
Um, and if you gave me the option to buy Bateman now and he's like, or next week and he's 80k off his maximum price, but he's scoring the
Mm-hmm.
way he is, I'd still jump on that boat.
Yep.
Like I would rather jump on Bateman scoring how he is making 80k than jump on a cash cow who's going to make you 100, 150k but only pump out 35s week to week.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yep.
So
That's
it really, yeah, it's very much down to how they're scoring.
and I think the other part you hit on there is usually when you're trading that player out, the opportunity cost. So if another player is tanking, say you're trading to Tedesco, if you've got a player still to make another 40k or something like that, but you want to trade him for Tedesco, you maybe just leave that 40k off and jump on Tedesco now before he starts taking off.
Yeah, definitely. Someone like Tedesco, he's probably undervalued by like 100k. So
Yeah.
if you're in that position, definitely like weigh up the odds. And Tedesco's going to make you a boatload of more points than most other players.
Yep.
The second question from Rhino. What players are on your blacklist to never be in your side again, no matter how appealing?
I love this question, and I'm going to cheat a little bit by looking at the next question because I think both those players mentioned are on my never again list. Dugan,
Yep.
firstly the way he left Raiders, and secondly just the consistency at being in and out each week and staying down every single tackle. No thanks. Moylan, no thanks. Once again, I think everyone's by now surely got Morbs in the never again list.
You know, every week every year, sorry, I like to talk him up just to throw in a spanner for people. This year he killed it out of the gate. I think he trapped more people because he killed it, and then the next
Yeah.
week he's back in center.
I mean, I won't lie. I put my hand up here. I brought him into my draft team just because I was absolutely struggling for centers, and I thought just 1 week. Come on, Mitch, just 1 week, and he burnt me. So I deserve that.
Yeah, for me it's just Orbison. Dugan's one I'm not keen on because I had him last year.
Mm-hmm.
He was injured. I'm like, oh, I'll hold through the injury. He comes back for a week and a half, and then he's injured again.
Yeah.
And another one's Nathan Brown.
Okay. All right.
I've got him in my draft team, and I think he's an excellent player,
Yeah.
but he just has niggles and injuries, and he
Yeah. I
burned me.
guess.
I held him for 7 weeks last year.
Yeah. It's his play style, though, right? He plays hard which is why you love him, but it's also, I think, why he picks up those injuries.
Oh, and I'm not a fan. Like like Jai Arrow's going that way. I love Jai Arrow as a player, and he does massive scores. He'll have like a 90 one week and 30 the
Mm-hmm.
next. And I completely understand that, but I don't like looking at it.
So actually, that's an interesting one because to me, rather than players, some coaches tend to be in my never again list. It's funny that I'm about to give an example of Ricky Stewart because I'm considering Bateman, and I think everyone is. But I tend not to want Ricky Stewart forwards. He just changes his rotation so much each week, and I think there's a few coaches like this
He has
that
no
make
idea what he's doing.
yeah, and they make it really hard to predict players that are playing for him. So rather than having specific players, sometimes I tend to blacklist a coach and a position.
How do you feel about pay at the Dogs?
Yeah, I'd probably. I mean, he coached under Ricky, right? So I'd probably put him in that exact same basket of. I'm not sure if I want any dogs forwards at the moment. He seems to be floundering, um, and I can see him chopping and changing for the next few weeks.
So realistically, it's pretty much anyone who's had anything to do with Ricky Stewart you don't like.
Look, we're doing well this season, so I've got no problem with Ricky. It's just purely fantasy stuff. Yep, stay out of my team.
All right, the next question from Rhino you've already touched on. Assuming Dugan goes to full back with Moylan broken, is he a good pickup? He's got a break even of 34, but he's held together with strapping tape.
No, no, don't touch him. Honestly, you'll regret it. Good luck to you if you do, but no thanks.
I can see Dugan smashing out 60 and being injured next week at the like 10-minute mark.
Yeah, same here. I can see him get it. You get maybe 1 or 2 weeks out of him, and it'll be a bit like Mitch Orbison. People will be jumping on him, thinking this is too good to be true, and it will be too good to be true.
And the last question from Rhino. The Dragons with 2 gun forwards to return from testicle-related issues, who will both play State of Origin upon their return. Are they worth planning to bring in straight away, given the games they'll miss?
Um, so who's the second one? There's Frizz. I didn't catch what the second one was for us.
I'm not 100% sure. I'm assuming it's a shot at Jack DeBellin is the only one I can think of
Oh,
from the Dragons.
it's
But I don't think we'll see him this year.
no, I don't think he's come back at all.
Yeah, probably not ever again.
Uh,
Although he wants the Dragons to open their books on like stubby sales and sticker sales and stuff now. It's getting
okay.
ridiculous. I don't think the Dragons want him back at this point.
No. Okay. Well, Frizz, I don't know. Shout out to Welshie because he'd probably be all over this question and tell you must get the man in. But I think if I was going to pick him up, I don't think he's a good player, and he can score well. But I don't think he's one of those players that demands being picked, given the limited games he'll get in before Origin. If you want him, I think I'd be looking to bring him post Origin. How about
Yeah.
yourself?
Um, Frizz hasn't been fantasy relevant. Like he's been relevant, but he's never been a gun or
Yeah.
the guy that's going to carry his season. So I wouldn't worry about him. If he comes in and kills it with no DeBell in there and he does well, great. But he's coming back from injury. I don't know
Yep.
what his break even is, but I assume because he got injured in the game, it's probably not the best anyway. So you can
Hmm.
wait on him.
Yep.
Next question's from Filth. Are you factoring in buy rounds and origin to players you're trading in?
Do you want to go with this one first?
Yeah. For me, no, not really. It's not the years gone by where we have people missing 3 or 4 games due to
Hmm.
the buy rounds and that impacting your score. Like, there's ground to be made up if you can get someone in round 12 and then trade them up. But
Hmm.
if I'm trading in a gun, the extra 10, 15 points they average each week should more than make up for whoever I put in their place for one
Yep.
week and trading them up to them. Especially this early in the season. Maybe like if it's round 10, 11 and stuff, I might look at guys who are going to make some cash over Origin, and I can trade up again. But this early, a gun's going to smash everyone out of the water long term.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm similar. I'm not really looking at the buy rounds, but I guess what I do sometimes consider is whether or not, and it's only really for guns. For cows and stuff like that, I don't really consider it. But if I want a keeper, I sometimes consider whether or not they're playing Origin. Um, Only when I can't decide between the two. So, for example, if I'm looking at Tamo's almost peaked in my team, so next week I'll probably be looking at bringing in a gun front rower. Uh, so it's kind of between Fafita and Tapau. In that case, I might say, well, Tapau's not going to play Origin, so there's less chance of being rested and getting lower minutes in the weeks around that. So that might tip me, but that's really the only consideration I have for the buy rounds and Origin after the changes where there's the rep weekend.
All right, the next question comes from Filth as well. Is Bateman a genuine captain option?
Hmm, it's an interesting question. I mean, the bloke looks good, and for me, even more importantly, watching last week, he looked like he was having fun. So if you can do that well and just be loving it, I tend to think he probably is going to score above 50 as an average. I know some people have estimated mid 40s. To me, I'm thinking above 50, and I think he's demonstrated the ability to go large. So I guess you have got that, well, potentially you've got that consistency with a high ceiling. I think he could be a captain option. I do. I think I'd want another look at him at second row just to be
Yeah,
certain, because the second rows have shown that ability to vary a lot from week to week. But yeah,
Jair is a case for that.
exactly. But yeah, I'd consider him. How about
Um,
yourself?
yeah, I think he's becoming in like getting into that talk where he's got to be considered as a captain, especially with like Fafita, Cook. They're your standout guns, and they're still doing all right. Like, but under
Mhm.
50 points is not what you want to see from your captain. And if Bateman's producing, I think
Yep.
he's certainly someone to consider. The only concern would be Tapine coming back.
Yep. Who was named in the squad this week, but I think has been dropped out already. So he's not back this week, but you'd have to think next week is a chance.
Yeah, definitely. Next question comes from Camo. Is it better to handicap yourself short term in terms of points by only having 16 players this week, but compensate that with getting keepers and cash cows earlier? So Bateman and Rain this week and Ponga next, or play the 17 normal by getting on the Cardi party and foregoing Rain and Ponga for a week extra respectively, but still getting Bateman.
This is one of those it depends type questions, I think. Um, to me, it depends on what you think Cardi's going to score and what you value a trade at. So, some of those earlier questions that we talked about. Because if you're only bringing Cardi in for the point of trading him out in a few weeks or for filling that hole for just, I guess, this week is what he's saying, because my assumption is that he's got a problem with the halves and he could either bring Ponga in next week and just leave the halves empty, or get Cardi this week to fill it, and then Ponga the week after. So you'd only be using Cardi for that single week and then some price rises. So to me, if you think Cardi is only going to average 30s, I'd probably take the hit this week. It sounds weird to be taking a hit and playing 16 players this week, but if you don't think he's going to score well, and you're only intending on putting him in your 17 for 1 week and then replacing him with Ponga the following week, it doesn't seem like a valuable trade to me. Yeah, but if you think he's going to score a lot better, and you think maybe you'd potentially put Ponga in your wing fullback or something and push someone else out until Cardi inevitably shits the bed, then I guess it's probably not worth it, and you should get him in this week. What about yourself?
I'm going with Cardi. So I believe, for me, having 17 scorers is way more important than 16
Mm,
because scores fluctuate so much week to week in just players themselves, and
true.
I it's hard to fathom Bateman and Rain scoring an extra 30 or 40 points between them over who you bring in than having those guys there that you trade out and Cartwright. And you're getting Bateman either way. So the real question is, will Rain score whoever you're trading him in for more than him and Cartwright put together? And I feel like that's unlikely.
I guess so. In this situation, I think you said that so it'd be either Bateman and Rain this week or Cartwright and Bateman this week. So
Yeah.
if you think, say, if you think Rain's going to score 50, or maybe mid 40s, and you think Cardi might score 30, it's a 15-point increase on Rain, but then you're down one player.
Yeah, so
So
it's whoever, for me, it's whoever he's trading out Rain for.
yeah,
If he's trading out Rain for someone like Mahoney,
yeah,
and Mahoney could score 30, Kara could score 30, I don't think Rain will score 60.
no,
So
but
I would
yeah,
go the 17, unless you're not sold on Rain. Oh,
to
or
me,
on Cartwright.
I think the thing is though, I guess you might lose points, but how many points are you going to lose? And if it saves you a trade, is it worth those points? So let's say I don't know, Rain scores 15 more points than Cardi, but you're only playing 16, so you end up losing, uh, I don't know, 15 points or 20 points this week than what you could have had you played Cardi. Depending on your bench, it's obviously going to
Mm.
depend. But I think 15 or 20 points for a trade could be worth it. Saving your trade? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm very much on the belief you should just have 17 each week, or at least 18, because there's still question marks over whether Garner's going to be there. I think he is.
Yeah,
But your 16 can quickly turn into 15, and your week goes from, it's okay, I can deal with it, to, well, this is terrible.
yeah. I think you also made a good point about just with the way scorers are going at the moment, having an extra ticket in the lottery is kind of important.
Yeah, no, definitely. And there's the other thing. He could bring in, what's the Warriors half?
Lino?
Is it, no,
Oh, sorry, you're talking about their half this week, not the one that got
yeah,
traded.
yeah.
Uh,
Sh-
CHT?
yeah, Chanel.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but we'll go with CHT. I think if you're really not sold on Cartwright, you could trade in CHT for the week.
yeah,
I mean, I want a week to look at him because I didn't think he was that great. Like he's very much a ball runner, and I
yeah,
feel like he's going to be inconsistent as a winger, so I don't want him in my 17. But if you're desperate and it frees up cash for you to do Rain and Ponga next week, it's still good.
yeah. I think I'd be a little bit worried about CHT as well. To use a fairly recent example, I think I'd kind of consider him a bit like Tamari Martin when he made his debut. I think he scored some huge score like 70 or 80 in the first week, and then followed up with really low scores. And it's not really what you want from a cow.
Yeah, no, he's a guy I want to bring in, but I'm like I see him also very much like Tamari Martin, where he's going to jag that big score. He's a winger. He's going to jag a big score, and then you're going to ride that for 5 weeks until he's
Yeah,
maxed out in cash and hope he gets a second one in there.
yeah. And if you're playing him in your 17, those small scores might
Oh, I
might
wouldn't
hurt.
play him in my 17, but Kemba
Okay.
doesn't have any choices.
Yeah.
And the last question for the day, I don't think it was Kemo who said this. I actually forget who it's from. Should posters who trade in Cardi be banned if they post mid-game every time he misses a tackle?
I like this one. No, I think they should be banned if they don't post every time he misses a tackle.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. It's more demeaning to see the 30, 40 odd people type it 12 times a game. And I'll be in there
Yeah.
with them. I'll be joining them, so it's okay.
There's nothing more fun when you've got one of those players in your team than commiserating with all the other guys that have got them in your team.
Yeah, no, or you can just be like Milford, go on a massive rant, and then they just jag a try out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes the players just need a little bit of encouragement.
Yeah, because what we write on the forum really does impact them in real life.
Yep.
Although
And
throughout the week there was someone going off on social media at people talking about how shit his fantasy scores were. I forget who it was, but one of the players were upset about people talking shit about his fantasy scores.
poor bugger.
Um, I guess we'll finish up now with your captains of your top five captains for this week.
Uh, it's a good question. So, personally, because that's the reason I've got him, I'm playing Smith as my own captain. Uh, would I put him at the top? I think against dogs, it's really hard to say. It's one of those games where he could, the Storm could crush them, and he might not need to get involved that much, and he might get you one of his lower scores of say 50. So I'm a little worried about that. Um,
Keep in mind,
captains are
Cook and Fafita didn't get 50s last week.
yeah.
50's a
So
good score. I'd be happy if my captain returned that.
so that's what's making it so hard to tip captain this year, right? If you look at it, so Sharks are up against Eels, who I can't bring myself to say this, but they're doing well, and Bunnies are against Manly. So it's and until last week, I would have said Bunnies will run riot, and Cook and maybe even Surges could be great captain options, but I just don't know. With Tommy back for Eagles,
They actually look competitive.
yeah, they do. That could be good for Cook and Surges. In fact, maybe a good tight match might see them rack up lots of tackles. But I just don't know. And Sharks Eels, Fifi could do well against that. Uh, Eels are playing well, but I could see him still getting a lot of tackle breaks. So I don't want to sit on the fence. I'll say I'll go with Smith as my first captain choice because I've got him, and so more out of hope than anything.
Yep.
Then I'd probably have Fifi or Fafita for those not liking the nicknames as my second choice. I'm gonna say I haven't even talked about him, but DCE if you've got him, I would captain because I think against Rabbitohs and with them hitting a bit of form, I think he looked really comfortable with Tommy Turbo back in the team. He looked like he was enjoying his football, and he's one of those players where if he's got confidence and he's enjoying himself, he can rack up the tackle breaks, which is odd for a half, but he's somewhat strong, and I could see him getting a few line break assists and try assists. So I'd have him as my third, and then I'd put Cook fourth, and maybe Surge as fifth. How about
Okay.
yourself?
Mine's very different.
Okay.
First up, first K off the rank is Robbie Farah. His
All right. Yeah.
his his average is 72, which is inflated. He's had 3 tries the first couple weeks, but last week without a try, without any real offensive stats, he had 0 tackle breaks, 0 line breaks, none of that, just
Yeah.
pure work. He got 52 tackles, which is crazy. He
Yeah.
got 62, so I think he has to be considered. And honestly, if Cook really underperforms, people could probably jump almost a straight trade from Cook to Farah next week. Um,
All right.
Number two, I've got Smith because you just can't have Smith anywhere else. He's the top two position always
Yeah.
every week.
Yeah.
Third is Reynolds. He's just performing so well in the halves for the Rabbits.
True. Yeah.
Fourth, fourth is probably Cherry Evans, and then in that fifth spot, it's a toss up between Fafita and Cook. Tapau's probably someone I'd consider over them, but Cook and Fafita have just been guns for so long, and if you've got Cook, you've got to. I think you've got to captain him just based on the fact you've spent so much on him.
Yeah.
And he's not going to score. He scored under 50 this week, but he's not going to. If he scores under 50 again, it's not going to be by much. And there's
hmm
every chance he scores 60, 70.
So so Farah number one, you're not worried about Kickout and how the Panthers might play with him back.
I love Kickout. He's a fucking monster. But Farah's just. He's been killing it this year. The first 2 weeks he had 3 try assists. He's
hmm
had 3 tries already this year, and he's still making massive amounts of tackles. He's averaging over 40 tackles a game.
Yep.
He's safe.
Okay.
And honestly, if Cogger wasn't there and Foreign was still around, I'd probably have Lachlan Lewis up there somewhere as well.
Actually, that's not a bad shout because I think if even if dogs are competitive with the Storm, they're probably going to be doing a lot of kicking. Um, Storm are very good at keeping you in your own half. They've got great line speed, and yeah, I could see him getting
Do you
even
think
more
he
of
could?
those
Do
kick
you think he
meters.
could make 500 kick meters?
Yeah,
Assuming Cogger's not impacting it, and he plays the same role, do you think he'll get the 500?
I think he could. Yeah, he's been close, hasn't he, this season? I think he's gone.
Yeah,
Is it,
he's had some ridiculous kick meters. They're all over 400 from memory.
just trying to quickly bring it up
I
without
got I
breaking conversation,
No, no,
but
no, that's all right. I got 441 the first week, 453 week 2 against the Eels, and then 419 against the Tigers.
yeah. So 450 against the Eels. I could see him cracking 500 kick meters against Storm. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's averaging around 25 tackles a game. So he's got I'm really on board with him this year. I don't see a way I'm ever going to get him in my team unless Cartwright shits the bed and I've got the cash there. But I want
Yep.
Bateman next week. I want Tedesco next week. I want Ponga next week. Um,
Yeah.
the list just keeps growing of players that I don't have that I probably should have.
Yep. I agree. For me, I mean, like, as I said, Tamo is just he's got a BE of 43 this week, so I'll be looking to get rid of him next week. And as you said, I want Bateman, I want Teddy, I want Ponga, I want a replacement for Tamo, so probably Tapau, since he's gonna rid himself of that week one score. Yeah,
Who's your player of difference this week? Your POD.
I think just because we've talked about him a bit, and because I want him in my team, I think I'm going to give it to Lockie Lewis or Adam Reynolds. I think halves at the moment are really a good POD. How about yourself?
I really wanted to say Lucky Lewis as well, but I knew we've touched on him too much.
Yep.
So my point of difference is a player with 1.1%,
Okay.
and he's under 700k in price, which is crazy. And he's just gonna come out and smash it this week, and that's kick out. I think the Panthers are gonna do so well off the back of him. He just breaks tackles at will. I
Yeah,
wouldn't.
it's
He's not like my captain choice, but I'm expecting a massive game from him this week.
a good shout. I think I don't know if his ownership will go up anytime this week. I think he'll probably finish this week at around that percent.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
you might see a few people trading him in next week or the week after.
Once they've seen him just decimate.
Yeah. Yeah. Good shout.
Was there any other questions in regards to your team personally?
No, I don't think so. I think something that I will mention that's worth remembering, although I don't think there's anyone that fits the bill, is that from this week onwards we might start seeing some new DPP players, right? Dual
Yeah.
positions.
No, I think they've changed it and they've just got a schedule now. So I think it's next.
Ah,
It's
okay,
like mid-April.
right.
They've got a date set where they update the dual position players instead of having the 3 game rule at named at a position.
Okay,
Just because
that's
there's
a
that
shame.
controversy when players are like named to start on Team List Tuesday and then get shuffled around. Because
Yep.
otherwise we could see Latrell Mitchell in the halves soon. But
Yeah,
who
that's what
knows?
I
They
was
still
thinking.
they
Is
still might make that.
okay. Well, yeah, that's something that's worth considering, I guess. Coming around that Origin time is those dual position players. So hopefully I'll have to go back and look at that schedule, but hopefully there's a change just before Origin.
Yeah. Actually, on that note, I do have one question about my team.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've got Burns. He's staying in my squad. He's out for 4 weeks, but I'm still keeping him.
Yep.
Um, I can loophole him, which is a point of contention among the fantasy community, whether that should be a rule or not. But the
Yep.
fact is, it's not against the rules, so just do it. But the question is, do I get a free look at Burr, or do I get a free look at Jack Bird?
Bird for mine. Jack Bird, I think.
No, well, see, for me, I've got. So if I want to take a free look at Bird, the only person I could use instead is Rava. So I get a look at
Okay.
Bird, but then it has to be Rava coming into the squad. Or if I look at Burr, then it
Mhm.
has to be Host. Like I've got Host, Zeri, or Rava as options.
Ooh. Yeah, that's.
I still feel like in
Uh,
that situation, I'd probably go Rava anyway.
yeah, I think you would. I don't think there's any obvious standout there, and when there's no obvious standout, I guess pick someone like Rava and hope for a try and some big tackle busts.
Yeah, I think that sells it. I'm gonna look at Bird and we'll decide then.
Don't say you're gonna loophole. Don't say it.
It's gonna happen. It might happen. We'll see how Bird scores. If Bird scores well, then I'm not gonna do it. But we'll see. And I think that wraps up everything. Hopefully next week we'll have Welshie back.
Yeah, teaspoon of cement.
If you actually wait a day to watch the podcast, Google does put up his subtitles. I've made sure that happens, and for the most part, they're accurate. Sometimes it's not, and you don't have a clue what he's talking about still, but it's manageable.
Yeah.
Um,
It,
oh, you go.
no, I was just gonna say it's as someone who lived over there for 6 years, I still struggle with him, so I don't blame Google.
No, that's fair. Um, it's awesome having you on again. Hopefully we can keep this as a regular thing, considering you don't have a job, so why not?
Yeah, why not? It's enjoying it. It's fun.
And yeah, next week, again, any guys in the community that want to get involved and jump on, ask us questions and answer questions as badly as we do, feel free to jump on in.
Yeah, it's worth it, guys. Remember, I lost 20 points last week based on the advice of Welshie. So, no, but seriously, the getting the 300k in my bank looked like a masterstroke. So, you do get good advice on occasion.
On occasion, it is definitely all me. We won't mention Welshie. Um, but yeah, no, it's awesome having you again.
Thank you.
And yeah, if we get someone else, we still might just keep you on board.
All right. Yep. Let me know.
All right. We'll see you guys next week sometime.
Thanks. Good luck, all.